You are listening to the Mark Lesko Podcast, a podcast by diehard fans for fans. Mark covers all things Penn State football and the Pittsburgh Steelers, as well as anything related to the sports and fitness world. Tune in weekly to listen to a couple of dedicated fans talk about these topics without filters. Thank you for listening to the Mark Lesko Podcast.
What's up, mateys? Welcome to the Mark Lesko Podcast. I'm your host, J-Rod, and this is Pirate Central. Last week, guys, finally made it. 2025. Disappointing? I'd like to think so. That's very obvious. There's a lot of obvious things with the Pittsburgh Pirates. So, how did we get here? And where are we going? That's my first pitch topic. Well, how did we get here is where we'll start. I believe the first game of the season was March 21st. That was against Miami Marlins. You know, that was a really rough first game. Paul Skeens versus Sandy Alcantara. And, you know, he hadn't looked like himself over a year, and you know, I don't really know what Sandy's whole outlook looked like. I mean, it started out with him being 1-0. He just outpitched him. I mean, I don't think that he actually beat Paul Skeens, but he looked better. That guy ended his season with a 10-12 record of 5.48 ERA, had 167 innings pitched, and had 139 strikeouts. It's okay. You know, it's pretty decent given what we put Mitch Keller through this year. I know his numbers haven't been all that impressive, but no, that's where it all started. Lost that first game, and then that series was very telling. So the major dates I'm looking at, of course, are the beginning of the season, and then I'm going to go to March 30th, which was that final game against the Marlins, and we started the season out 1-3. If that is not a foretelling of what was going to come this season, I don't know what else will. We had so much hype and hope with spring training coming in, like we always do, but with that pitching rotation. Now, again, I remember going over what the rotation looked like before spring training started, and then I said about what it looked like afterwards. And what you had was a jumble of, you know, Skeens and Keller and whoever you wanted to put in. I think Falter was one of our main guys. And I'm trying to remember the other names. Like, I know Majinski had some starts here and there. I know Burrows had some starts here and there. It was a very much, you just had Skeens and Keller being the guaranteed guys, and whoever you decided to pitch after that, with Falter included. And Falter didn't do too bad. And, you know, and I think that Andrew Haney, yes, so it was, I guess, Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller, Andrew Haney, Bailey Falter, and whoever they wanted to throw in from the minors. And, you know, you kept hearing about Bubba Chandler at the beginning of the season. When's he coming up? And then you just had that carousel of Burrows, Majinski, and Ashcraft. He eventually came up and did some before Bubba did. And it took Bubba until much later on in the season. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. So what was the next great point of why this season was what it was? I believe the next would have been May 7th, which was the day after they fired Derek Shelton. And that's when we went 12-26. And of course, if you had just fired the guy after last season and given Don Kelly a chance to play 500 ball all the way, instead of having 14 games under 500, where he didn't have really a whole lot to do a whole lot with. I mean, you were asking the guy to basically go on a 20-game winning streak for them to have a shot at doing anything. But that was the major turning point there. And then, again, Don Kelly got inserted for the head coaching position. just interim. I don't know if he's going to be back or not. I hope he is personally, but that's up to them. And, you're hearing the buzzing already of Ben Sherrington may keep his job. And if that were to happen, we'll get into that, guys. But so the next big point I would like to think is somewhere around, what was it, July 2nd, if I'm right about this. So at that time, we were 38-50, and that meant that we were 26-24 of those 50-game stretch when Don Kelly took over. And it was like, wow, there's actually a little bit of a window of hope. There was a section of hope in the season for the Pirates, and I think it ended at that point because that was when we did the 3-game series sweep of the Cardinals, 7-0, 1-0, 5-0. And then we went on a day off, and we went into the 4th of July being like, well, we're 12 games under 500 as opposed to the 14 that we were. I mean, it didn't look as abysmal going into that. And then we went into that buzzsaw of a stretch after the homestand. We had a 9-game road trip, and I believe it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, we went 1-8, in our next 9 games. So that completely destroyed any hope that we had of that. So then we went into the All-Star break, and I think, of course, you have to look at the trade deadline being the next thing, where, Adam Frazier, Caleb Ferguson, and also Bailey Falter, just to name a couple of the guys that they just dumped, just gave away naturally for random guys that may or may not be something. It's not a guarantee. This is really what they decided was going to be the big important factor, I guess, but that's just what they always do. They unload the guys they don't want to deal with anymore, and then this is what you have left. I mean, Robert Flores is not doing terrible. Cam Devaney didn't do a whole lot. Sisk has been good, but then not that great. Not consistent. I mean, just filling it out, just going through the motions as always. And I would like to think there's just one more point probably that I thought, fourth I'll do is that when we swept the Dodgers, we were 13 games under 500. Again, we were just either 14, 13, 12. We kept hovering around that being 500 ball. And then after that, if I'm going to count it right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. They were 12 of their next 15. Yeah. Of their next 15 games, they were 3-12. So completely buried them, and here we are. This is where we're at this end of the season. So again, that's how we got here. I mean, those points of the season, they were either 500 or below 500. They never, I think, again, that point in July 2nd, that 50-game stretch, they had a above 500 record. They were 26-24. So there was at a time where we had winning baseball in Pittsburgh. It wasn't a great window, but you can't say the whole season, they were losers. But where are we going from this? That's really the next big question. I mean, we're going into 2026, most likely not having changed a whole lot, with the exception of some players coming in. Obviously, Jared Jones will be back next year, maybe at the beginning of May, maybe at the end of May. It's got to be around that area. And then you have Connor Griffin. That's a huge name. That's a great thing to see that the Curve did make the playoffs in the AA affiliation, but they didn't go a whole lot. I mean, they won the first game and then they lost the last 2, and that was the end of that. So it's nice to know somebody can make the playoffs in some shape or form, but that's really what we have to look forward to. Our minor league stuff can, maybe do something spectacular, but it doesn't translate to the big leagues. It just doesn't. What you see coming in to the majors is, it's night and day. Like I don't know if I want to say that all the others, like, minor league systems and or sports, you do this type of league and then you do the professional. And it's like, yeah, of course it's the complete differential. And when they come up here, I mean, who do you have? You have Nick Gonzalez doing very, very good work. And that's it. Ben Cherington has had his job at the Pittsburgh Pirates' organization for 6 years, and the best he can do is Nick Gonzalez. I mean, you could honestly argue that, bringing back guys like Kutch and Connor Joe for that one stretch, 2-3 years ago was a good idea, and it was at the time. Brian Reynolds was not his guy. O'Neill Cruz was not his guy. And even those guys are starting to show they're on the back ends of their careers in that they're going in the opposite direction. They're not improving. They're kind of diminishing. So, and, Spencer Horwitz, I'll give him that one too. Like that was probably one of the more steady bats that they have probably acquired in the offseason. I mean, Tommy Pham took him about a month and a half to get going. And when he did, he was fire. But the whole season, I would say, was probably where you look at Spencer Horwitz. I mean, if I look at the box score from yesterday, I mean, Horowitz went 0 for 3, and he had 2 walks and a strikeout. His whole season is 257. I mean, I'll take that any day when I see guys like Devaney with a 118 batting average and Sawinski with a 131 batting average. I just cannot believe that players like that got the opportunities that they did. The guys that were off yesterday, it's just like, wow, you couldn't have anybody else. Nope, apparently not. I mean, Jared Triolo, I'm not saying he's near O'Neill Cruz's stuff or Sawinski, but it's very it's discouraging. I mean, when you see that you have in 6 years given us 2 bats that actually could do something and maybe are going to be here next year. That's really what this is all about. Where are we going? 2026. I do see Nick Gonzalez and Spencer Horowitz returning. I don't see why they would get rid of that and not pick him up again. And then you're looking at what else you have to fill in, because as far as I'm concerned, I just don't know how you keep giving Davis opportunities. I just don't. I just feel like between Sawinski and Davis, I think I've seen enough to know that this is not the solution. And again, the only reason why Davis is even a part of this conversation is because Paul Skeens likes him and he catches him very well. And his glove is the other thing that has kept him, in the majors this whole entire season. So that's the thing. You are looking at basically your entire lineup for next year to be replaced. As much as you want Triolo to do something spectacular, he is a bench guy, if that. Bart is a good backup, if that. So it's like you're looking at potentially pretty much every position. Like you have 6 positions you need to fill, like the entire outfield, with the exception maybe of Reynolds. I don't really foresee O'Neill Cruz coming back either. I just don't. I think that's another thing. I think he's one of those guys. I think you've seen enough of him, what he has done. He has progressed. He is, again, it's always the negatives with the Pirates' organization and how they develop players. So you're looking at a season of 203 batting average with an OPS of 682. That's a guy that is a minor league player, or sure, let him go elsewhere, and I'm sure he'll pick his bat up and he'll be spectacular, but not going to happen here. So again, the guarantees are Gonzalez and Horowitz for sure. Maybe Reynolds. I know he has kind of bounced back. He has his batting average back up to 244, which is probably the worst of his career. That I will take, in the sense I'm just done seeing our lineup have anybody under 200. I'm just so tired of seeing this. Like the fact that Devaney and Sawinski, I mean, Nick York didn't have a whole lot of at-bats this season, but, he has a 220 average off of how many at-bats? His career, he has seen 87. He has had 50 at-bats this season. So it's enough of a sample size where it's like, yeah, you saw him at the plate a decent amount, but I'm going to hold off putting the judgment on him for now. So in the end, again, you have two solid names, and maybe McCutchen comes back. I don't know, guys. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's going to be 39 after the season. If he wants to come back and they want to extend him, I don't see any issue with him being a part of this season, next year's season. And then Reynolds. So there you got four guys. You got Gonzalez, Horowitz, McCutchen, and Reynolds. Everybody else needs to be better or come from elsewhere, either through the minors, bring up all the guys, or you go and trade for them all. I mean, as far as the pitching is concerned, we all know that's been the one bright spot of the whole season. Between the bullpen, I mean, if you look at like who was pitching yesterday, Majinski had 3 innings pitched after Burroughs, and Johan Ramirez pitched, and Merida pitched. They're back again. Johan has a ERA of 5.5, and Merida has 3.4. I know that they have so many other names associated with their bullpen, and could they live with that? Have Dennis Santana be their closer? Yeah, I think that would be a fantastic bullpen. I don't think it'll be an elite bullpen, but it'll be a good bullpen. And it's going to, again, with Jared Jones back and Bubba Chandler coming back next year, as getting all the reps he's had so far this season, I'd like to think that they're going to come in, be as hungry as ever. Maybe you give Braxton Ashcraft a shot. Of the 3 guys between Majinski, Burroughs, and Ashcraft, I think he's the one who has the best chance to make that rotation. Again, who knows if they'll just do the insert where they do that opener thing like the Rays do, where they have just a series of bullpen guys in a bullpen game. If that's the way they want to handle it, that's their choice. But the bottom line is, where are we going? It just needs to be better offensively. That's just the bottom line here. I mean, in terms of the defense that's on the field, again, you only have so many arms, I'm saying, in terms of the positions. Like, you're guaranteed to have a first baseman next year, which is nice for a change. And you have Gonzalez, who can either play second base or shortstop. I prefer to keep him at second base. I think it's his natural position. I just think you need to go out and get a third baseman and a shortstop, just a legitimate one. One where you have to pay maybe 2-year, $40 million deal, maybe 35. Just try to find a way to give somebody a deal. I don't know what the payroll will be next year, but it has to be more. But we all know, guys, we all know this story. Where does it always go? It always goes to that direction. It's always going to be about how can the Pirates find every which way as an organization to not be good. That's just what Bob Nutting's game plan is. The owner, the president, Travis Williams, and potentially Ben Sherrington next year, because there is no guarantee he's going to get fired. Everyone in the world should know he should be fired. But the only person who can do that doesn't care. That's just what it really should be. I think every episode for next season, I think until I see that either the ownership has changed or the outlook has changed, and if it's actually obvious that it is changing, I think I may have to entitle every episode next year, They Don't Care Part 1, and I'll see how many parts I have to continue that until it stops. But it's been going on for how many years, guys? Again, I was born 87, and I've seen 30. This will be my 38th season I've been alive. And I have seen, I want to say 6 seasons, maybe 7, that I've seen winning seasons. And I've only seen them go to the playoffs 4 times, maybe 5. I mean, I was like a little guy. I can remember the last one with the Braves in 92. I was 5. I can remember it. So I've seen 4 playoff appearances, but I've only seen 1 wild card win. I've only seen them go to the division round and then lose to the Cardinals in a 5-game series, and it went all the way to the 5th one. Adam Wainwright was pitching, so I knew that it was over. And then we had to go through the series of Bumgarner, Arrieta, Cy Young winning National League pitchers, back-to-back in wild cards, which is ludicrous. And, it's such a coincidence that you talk about how they get to those championship games back when I was a young kid in the early 90s. Yeah, you got to the championship series and then you went to the World Series. There was no wild card structure until 94. I found that to be a coincidence where the Pirates went back to back and they, didn't have to go through a wild card. They were just the representatives of the East. And then they finally came up with a wild card structure to make it easier for them. And then when we finally get to the wild card 20 some years later, they had to say one and done. They did one wild card game, and then you got into the division round. And I'm just like, and then when we finally stopped doing that, that's when they started to eliminate the one and done idea, and they gave them a best of 3 wild card. Again, it's just remarkable how we keep just missing out on these opportunities to extend it, maybe get further, but didn't have a shot. And again, you're looking at how many years of just abysmal devastation, just complete disappointment. Sorry, guys. Yeah, so in the end, guys, this is what the first pitch looks like. And we are almost there, guys. When the season's almost over, it's a bittersweet thing. I want to watch as much baseball as I possibly can, but not this kind of baseball. I've seen much of it. I think that even the 2010 year where they were 57 and 105 was even more entertaining than this. I mean, they had players coming up and it's going to be interesting at least. And with these guys, it just seemed like they didn't know if they were going to be interesting. They didn't care to be interesting. Like, they showed flashes. They didn't show up the next day. I mean, it was too inconsistent. So, and the bottom line is it just needs to be better. And I'm not rooting for the lockout in 2027, but if it means that we can put a salary cap in and start making it fair for the entire playing field, I would be all for that. So I really appreciate you guys being a part of my very first year doing this with the Mark Lesko Podcast. This has just been an absolute thrill. I just want to make a little note of that. And I just hope that you guys keep enjoying them, because I will be back next year, and I will be doing at least an episode once a month after the season is over, just to give updates and see where everything stands. But yeah, so let's move on to the 7th inning stretch, which is the MLB Playoff picture. I have this up here. All right, so what we have here is, if this playoff were to start tomorrow, this is what you would see. And look who's got the 6th seed in the National League. Another National League Central team who plays us this week. And we could very well be securing their spot in the playoffs. If the Reds sweep us, they will be going to the playoffs. That would be the second team that we have sent because they beat us. I don't think I've ever heard of that situation ever. So if you want to talk about getting as pathetic as they possibly can, this is what they're shooting for. So that would be about as much of a nail in the coffin for a GM as if I've ever saw one, where you were not responsible for one but 2 teams in your own division to getting to the playoffs. But yeah, that's what it looks like right now. The Reds would play the Dodgers, and then you have the Padres taking on the Cubs, and the winners of the game take on the Phillies and the Brewers. I'm just going to make a solid prediction because I saw who they have playing. I mean, the Mets are currently going to be playing the Cubs, and the Cubs have already secured their spot. I don't think they can get any higher. So, hypothetical, say the Pirates don't let the Reds sweep them, and they take at least one of the games. And if the Mets can survive the Cubs, I believe their last series is the Marlins. Let me just double check that. So the standings go. The Mets are currently, they play the Cubs. Yeah, then they play the Marlins. If they can take just at least 1 out of 3 from the Cubs, then they have a chance at least taking the series against Miami, and they may clinch that last playoff spot. So I am going to make the prediction that the Mets do find a way to secure that final spot over the Reds. I mean, they have some players, they have some offense, and of course, Terry Francona is a great manager. I knew they would be staying in that hunt until the very end of the season, but I'm going to make that prediction. Everybody else, I think, is going to here to stay in the National League, but the Reds, I think, will be replaced by the Mets for the playoffs. Now, this is a horribly jumbled system in the American League. Holy moly. The Blue Jays have not secured the number one spot. Both the Yankees and Red Sox, I think there are 2-3 games behind the Blue Jays. I think the Yankees can still secure it. I don't know about the Reds, but I'm going to double check that. So what you have in this wild card setup for the American League, I'm going to try and get through this. Like, Toronto has guaranteed a playoff spot, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have clinched that division yet. So the Yankees, not the Red Sox, but the Yankees have a chance of securing the American League East, and the Blue Jays could be a wild card team. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the Blue Jays are going to get a playoff spot just yet, because I think if they lose out and the Astros win out, they may take the last wild card spot. But as of right now, I'm going to say the Blue Jays are a playoff team. I don't see the Astros hanging on to that final spot. I think Cleveland doing what they've been doing is crazy. So that's really cool to see that story. I mean, for them to be down so much and have basically crawled back, being like 13 and a half games of first place like a month ago, and all of a sudden now they're just a game and a half or just half a game out of the first place team. I mean, that's pretty cool. But Detroit has really just kind of just gone downhill. But I think they know that they have a chance to still make the playoffs. But that's another thing. If Detroit loses their spot to the Guardians, then they move into the wild card spot, and the Astros could jump them. That's a good, scary thought. But, I mean, I'd like to think that Detroit has still a shot to do that, to win this division. Let me just double check here. So Houston has the Athletics and the Angels left, and they're all away, so they don't have a single home game left. And they got swept by the Mariners. So, I mean, it's like, if you lose 2 more games, I mean, that still would put their record at around 88 games. And as long as Detroit wins 3 of their last 6, I mean, they got to go 500 in order to secure that last wild card spot. And I think they're going to do that. I think Detroit holds on and at least takes a wild card spot. They may lose their spot to the Guardians. I mean, what does the Guardians have? Oh, they're playing Detroit. Well, that answers that question then. This next series against the Guardians in Detroit, I mean, it's all up to this point. Whoever wins that takes that division. So I'm going to predict they're home. Detroit is at Cleveland. Ooh, so I have a feeling that the Guardians, and I did predict that the Guardians were going to win this division. I mean, the Tigers had it wrapped up for about a month and a half, and they just decided to completely fall apart. So now here you have the Guardians coming in here and taking that division. So I do believe that the Guardians will win that division. Let me just quickly check the Yankees' remaining schedule. They got the White Sox and the Orioles. They got the White Sox and the Orioles, and they're all home. Okay, so the Yankees do have a chance. Let's just take a look at Toronto and see what this is. They're home for Boston and home for the Rays. Boston is playing for a playoff, so they could take one of 3, or 2 out of the 3. If that happens, then the Yankees, they have a pretty easy path. They could sweep the White Sox easily, but we all know the history of the Yankees these last several years. We never know. I personally think, given what I saw, I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the Yankees take this division, but I think the Blue Jays will be a wild card team for sure. Now, as the Mariners are concerned, I think they have secured that division. I think that's wrapped up. Just again, see what their record is compared to the Astros. Now, they're 3 games ahead of Houston. And their remaining games are home for Colorado and home for the Dodgers. Yikes. Okay. So So the Rockies, they could sweep them, and maybe they get swept by the Dodgers. I think because they are 3 games ahead, I'm going to say the Seattle Mariners do clinch that division. They'll be the number 1 seed, which would mean that the Blue Jays would then take on the Red Sox, or vice versa. They could flip. I could say that the Red Sox may be ahead of the Blue Jays when it's all said and done. But again, we're going to be witnessing, I think, what would that make it? If the Guardians take then they would take on the Blue Jays. Or Boston could take on Detroit. Like, it's going to be jumbled up. But I'm going to try my darndest to make this prediction. So I said that the Yankees would have the number 1 seed because they will have the better record at the end of the day. And that would move Toronto down to 4th, which, yes, would then be the Red Sox taking that. I think the Red Sox will be actually better than the Blue Jays. So I think they'll be the 4th seed and the Blue Jays will be the 5th seed. And that would then drop Detroit to 6th. And then, I'm trying to get this right. Yeah, I think that would make them Detroit would be 6th. And maybe Boston moves up to the 3rd. No, who would be that? So whoever wins so if the Yankees make the number 1 seed and they become a wild card, I think that would then make them the West. And then the Guardians would go to the 3rd. So it would just flip between Detroit and the Guardians. Okay, so that's my prediction, that Detroit will have the 6th seed, Guardians will have the 3rd seed, and then the Mariners will have the 2nd seed. Toronto has the 1st, and then it would be – or no, the Yankees have the 1st seed, and then it'd be the Toronto Blue Jays and the Red Sox. Yeah, that's what it's looking like for the overall pictures. Sounds pretty good to me. So I'll wrap this up, guys, now. I've had a pretty good episode, actually. So, but with the Pirates, guys, I think we can say that we know what a losing culture is for these past 46 years. Being in all the championship matches and division rounds with the wild cards. Yeah, we've seen our share of losing, and I don't really know what's going to happen after 2027 because, again, I do believe there's going to be a lockout. So you got 1 season. And what are you going to do with it? I mean, it's a 90% chance at this very moment, nothing. If Ben Sherrington will not be fired and the Pirates are basically hoping and praying for the lockout to happen so they can put a salary cap and floor on the spending. And so why would you fire a guy if you know next year you're not going to try for anything? So it's a pretty rough couple of years we've got. I mean, you're looking at a potential 2028 maybe is the next time the Pirates have a chance to be legit or contending. I can't say that next year won't happen, but we've seen this pattern, guys. And as much as I want to say that everything is going to be great, I want things to be great. I've always wanted that to be great for Pittsburgh, but they don't want that for themselves. Until they want that for themselves, we just have to wait. And I don't know when things will be better. Again, I'm crossing my fingers for 2028. That's just really what it is, guys. It's going to be a couple of years, but it's just what you do, man. You're loyal to your team, and you never give up on them. And even though they give up on themselves and they don't care, that's what you do. You wait and wait until someone comes in and they're better. So that's what you got, guys. And once again, I know it's a tough thing to try to be positive with, but I do know that they've got a couple of guys that you're going to look forward to seeing. Next year, they'll have some rookie sensations and guys that are going to come through the system, and they'll try their darndest. They will. I don't think there's anything to do with the players. I just know that the organization and it's everybody that's involved with it has this kind of attitude and setup. So this is what you have to get through. So I really hope that you guys stay strong, try your darndest to hope for a salary cap. Hopefully it comes soon, and I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I will see you guys next weekend. to see what they look for the overall outlook for next year and just kind of talk about what they should do in the offseason, even though they probably won't. But we'll talk about it still. So till then, you guys, I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next week. And until then, let's go Bucks.